Welcome to the first of 5 mini lectures on William Shakespeare's tragedy, Macbeth. In this mini lecture, I'll be walking through the first act, the first 7 scenes of the play, introducing the characters and basic plot elements, also talking about the relationship between Duncan and Macbeth, and particularly between Macbeth and his wife, Lady Macbeth. The dynamic between these characters is a fascinating component of the play. All right, to begin, Act One, Scene One, opens with the three witches. It's a very short scene, just 12 lines, and we get a sense of these three very important characters to the play. There's lots of options, though, on how this is actually performed, and the witches are one of the fun things when you're deciding to direct this play, to act in this play. One of the really fun decisions you have to make. What are the witches going to look like? And there's lots of variety in what actors have chose to do with them. Let's take a closer look at these first 12 lines. It's a very short scene. It's the witches are on a heath. What that exactly means, though, we can play with it. Strictly speaking, a heath would be a sort of a deserted, lonely, flat, barren piece of land. We know from the stage directions, the implied stage directions in their lines, that there's a storm brewing. We know that they talk about thunder and lightning. They talk about the hurly-burly. There's a battle going on nearby. A lot of information in these first 12 lines. The first witch says, "When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain?" The second witch answers, "When the hurly-burly's done." Hurly-burly's a great, great word. "When the battle's lost and won." An interesting notion because, yeah, so indeed a battle must be both lost and won. There's no middle ground, right? One group has to lose, one has to win. When the battle's lost and won. And that shall be ere the set of sun. So this battle that's going on in the nearby, it'll be done soon. It'll be done ere the set of the sun. Where the place? Upon the heath. There to meet with Macbeth. So they're having this conversation, and then they're called away. The first witch says, "I come, Grimalkin," which is her familiar spirit. If you look at the footnotes, most editions will say it's a cat, refers to her cat spirit or familiar. The second witch says, "Paddock calls," and Paddock is her toad or her familiar spirit. And then anon, "Fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air." This idea of it being fair and foul at the same time will be a theme that comes up again and again. Just like with a battle, in order to win a battle, someone has to lose a battle. There's a loser and a winner. So a battle is lost and won. Fair is foul. Fair means pretty, nice. Foul means ugly or not so nice. We have both existing at the same time. So there's lots of really interesting antithesis happening right here in the very first opening 12 lines. We jump to Act 1, Scene 2, and we meet Duncan for the first time. Duncan is the king of Scotland. And he calls forth. He's in the midst of this battle, but he's removed from it enough that he's not right in the battle, and he's getting word of what's happening in the battle when a captain comes, and he's talking with this captain, trying to get a report what happened. And most versions of this, the captain's in a bad way. He has been fighting. He is bloody. He's broken. He's going to, by the end of the scene, need surgeons to come help him. But before he goes into that surgery, before he goes to get his medical treatment, he talks about what happened on the battlefield. He says here, follow along with me if you're not already, Act 1, Scene 2, this is line 7. "Doubtful it stood, as two spent swimmers that do cling together and choke their art. The merciless MacDonald," that's the opposing captain, the opposing general, "worthy to be a rebel, for to that the multiplying villainies of nature do swarm upon him. From the western isles of kerns and gallow glasses is supplied, and fortune, on his damned quarrel smiling, showed like a rebel's whore. But all's too weak for brave Macbeth." So here's where Macbeth enters into the story, is this captain talking about him on the battlefield. We don't actually get to see it, but we hear the captain commending him as a warrior. "For brave Macbeth, well he deserves that name. Disdaining fortune with his brandished steel," with his sword, "which smoked with bloody execution like valor's minion, carved out his passage till he faced the slave," till it was Macbeth against MacDonald, "which ne'er shook hands nor bade farewell to him, till he unseamed him from the nave to the chops, and fixed his head upon our battlements. This is a gory telling of the story. So when he unseamed him from the nave to the chops, think of like a seam in your clothing, right? If you unseam it, you rip it open. And he was unseamed from his nave, his navel, his belly button, right up to his chops. So we can see the imagery, this very violent, bloody imagery of Macbeth unseaming him from the nave to the chops, and then taking off his head and fixing it on the battlement. So they cut off the head and they hold it up high of Macdonald. So yes, this is a great victory, but just like the witches said in the first scene, we're also well aware of the great loss that's happened from Macdonald's perspective. Tragedy, the thing about Shakespearean tragedy is yes, it ends with death. We all know, we talked about that, we know that. But Shakespearean tragedy usually begins with something good, or at least something that can be perceived as good. And this triumph on the part of Macbeth is setting him up for greatness. This is a great moment for Macbeth as a character. It's a great moment for Lady Macbeth back home, for their family name. This is something good. The play is starting off on this very high point, at least from Macbeth's point of view, certainly not from Macdonald's point of view. At the same time this battle is going on with Macdonald, we also learn that there's another character. We're not going to ever see him, but he was the Thane of Cawdor, and the Thane of Cawdor is a traitor. And at this point, the original captain has been wheeled off stage, and now we have Ross, and Ross is going to appear again throughout the play. The captain, he's done. He just had that little small part in the beginning. Ross is going to come on stage, and he's going to talk about what the Thane of Cawdor did. Act 1, Scene 2, line 55. Follow along with me in your text. This is Ross speaking. The Thane of Cawdor began a dismal conflict, till that Bayona's bridegroom, lapped in proof, confronted him with self-comparisons, point against point, rebellious arm against arm, curbing his lavish spirit, and to conclude, the victory fell on us. And Duncan says, great happiness. So we've got this traitor, this Thane of Cawdor, and Duncan has to make a decision what he's going to do with him. And he says, line 66, no more that Thane of Cawdor shall deceive our bosom interests. Bosom refers to your heart, the interest of our heart. Go pronounce his present death. So Duncan sentences this traitor, this Thane of Cawdor, to death. This might be a good moment to mention what a Thane is. A Thane, so we have a king, and then a Thane is similar to an earl or a duke. It's a position of high nobility in Scotland, and that answers directly to the king. So to be a Thane of a place, I suppose maybe the closest thing we have in the 21st century for comparison's sake in the United States might be maybe a mayor of a town, or maybe probably higher than that, really, more of a governor who runs an entire state or a larger space than just a town. There's not a great way to compare this because we don't live in feudal Scotland. But when you're thinking of a thane, think a duke, or not the king, but a person just one notch or maybe a couple notches just below the level of being king. Now, very important here at the end, after he's pronounced the death of this very powerful character, this Thane, he says, this is line 68, and with his former title, greet Macbeth. Macbeth is now to be the new Thane of Cawdor. Now, what's interesting about that, he was already a Thane. Macbeth is already the Thane of Glamis. And now he's going to be a double Thane because he's also going to inherit this other space and become the Thane of Cawdor. So he'll have two titles, and that happens. That can certainly happen. Act 1, Scene 3, we see the witches again. Act 1, Scene 3, we're going to see Macbeth and Banquo. Remember at the end of Act 1, Scene 1, they said, where the place, upon the heath, there to meet with Macbeth. Here they're going to finally meet with Macbeth. The hurly-burly's done, the battle's over. Macbeth and Banquo, his best friend, his co-general, Banquo is just as victorious throughout this battle against Norway as Macbeth was. And so first we see the three witches. And again, lots of creativity. If you ever get a chance to act in this, direct in this play, get creative. Do something fun with these witches. Hopefully something terrifying. Yeah, I've always thought it would be interesting to have clowns play the witches. I've seen it played with nurses. That's really quite fascinating. That's the Patrick Stewart film version from a few years ago. Sometimes the witches will be old women. Sometimes they'll be very young, beautiful women. Sometimes they'll. I've seen several productions where there's a very young witch, a middle-aged witch, and a very old witch. That's an interesting way to do it. There was a 1971 film version that took that approach. But the point is, with the witches, there's a lot of room for directors and theater professionals to get really creative here. We got the three witches talking amongst themselves. Where hast thou been, sister? Killing swine or killing pigs. And sister, where thou? Where thou? And this is a great story, so I want to jump into it here. It's a little hard at first to understand. You might have to read it 2 or 3 times, but then once you get it, and especially if you can hear it spoke aloud and imagine the witches saying it, it makes sense. Here's the story: a sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap, and munched and munched and munched. "Give me," quoth I. "Aroint thee, witch!" the rump-fed Runyon cries. So there's this woman. She's the wife of a sailor. She's eating some chestnuts. She's got them in her lap and she's eating them. The witch walks up to her, the first witch, and says, "Hey, give me some." And she says, "Aroint thee, witch." She won't share her chestnuts. So the witch is telling this story to the other two witches. Her husband's to Aleppo gone, master of the Tiger. Tiger is the sailor's ship. "But in a sieve I'll thither sail, and like a rat without a tail I'll do, I'll do, I'll do." So she's going to get revenge on this woman by getting revenge on her husband, the sailor, and she's going to mess up his journey in the Tiger, in the ship. The second witch is more than pleased to hear this. She says, "I'll give thee a wind." The first witch says, "Thou art kind." And the third witch says, "And I another." So they're going to give her, they're going to use their magic to make some winds, and she's getting ready. She's got this plot. She's going to sail off and get her revenge, all over not getting some chestnuts. Kind of a great sort of moment and insight into their character. Well, anyway, so they're having this conversation. They're waiting for Macbeth and Banquo, and then all of a sudden we see Macbeth and Banquo come onto stage. This is line 39. Banquo sees the witches, and he says, line 39, Act 1, Scene 3. Follow along with me. "What are these, so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on it? Live you? Or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me, by each at once her happy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so." Now this is a fascinating line because it gives us some implied stage direction as to what the witches should look like. They have beards. So some productions will cut this line because they don't want their witches to have beards. But if you keep the line, you have to do something with it that's interesting. So I saw a production recently that was quite fascinating. It had two actresses, two women, playing two of the witches, but then the third was actually a man, and he did have a big beard and was clearly very masculine in the way that he carried himself on stage. But he was also haunting in the way he carried himself on stage. And there was something it's hard to describe in the lecture, but he had a smile to him, sort of like an evil clown kind of a smile that was a bit terrifying. He played his part beautifully. And at this point in the production, Banquo caught sight of he saw the first two witches first, gave the speech, then he sees the third witch, a man with a beard, and says, "But your beard prevents me to interpret so." And it was a really nice moment of them using the line to build upon the selections that they made, the creative choices they made to have this man play this third witch. Now, as soon as they're introduced, the witches don't talk much, but they give a prophecy. And in fact, they give 3 prophecies, one for each witch. Macbeth says to them, going just right on to the next line, he says, "Speak, if you can. What are you?" They don't answer the question, and so they jump into this. The first witch says, "All hail Macbeth. Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis." Fine. He already knows he's Thane of Glamis. He's been Thane of Glamis for a long time. This doesn't seem surprising or strange. The second prophecy, though, the second one, is a little stranger. He says, "All hail Macbeth. Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor." And that is interesting because we know from the previous scene he had just been made Thane of Cawdor. The king had decided he would be Thane of Cawdor as well as Glamis, but Macbeth doesn't know it yet. The witches know it, And the king knows it, and a lot of people know it, but Macbeth didn't. So when he hears that, it's a bit jarring. He's going to go on in a moment and say, well, the Thane of Cawdor is still alive. Why are you dressing me in borrowed robes? Why are you calling me by a title that I don't have? He doesn't realize he actually does have that title, not yet. And then last, and this is the most important one, the third witch says, all hail Macbeth that shalt be king hereafter. They've just prophesied you're eventually going to become king. And this is the moment that the idea of him being king first seeps into his mind, and it's going to poison his mind, and it's going to poison the rest of the play. And the question is, if they never would have made this prophecy, would the rest of this play have to happen? Would he have to do the things he's about to do? Remember, he's in his moment of greatness. He's riding home in triumph after a great victory. And then this idea seeps into his mind that these witches have predicted you'll be Thane of Cawdor, which is going to come true in just a moment. He's going to find that out. And king hereafter. And he doesn't know what to do with that. That's a lot of information to process. Now, Banquo jumps in at this point, and he's like, wait, what about me? What about me? And so they have three prophecies for Banquo as well, and they're just as difficult to interpret. For Banquo, he doesn't quite know what to do with them either. The first which says lesser than Macbeth and greater. So you're going to be lesser than Macbeth and greater. And it's that great sense of antithesis that we see throughout the play. Fair is foul and foul is fair. The battle is lost and won. You're going to be lesser than Macbeth and greater. Not so happy, but much happier, says the second witch. I'm sorry, yet much happier, says the second witch. And the third witch, and again, it's the third prophecy that's really going to drive the plot. She says, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. Get kings means you will beget kings, or your sons will be kings. You'll never be king, but your sons will. Now think about the conflict that this instantly creates between the two men. Macbeth is told he'll be king. Banquo is told his own sons will be king. That's a problem in terms of the line of kings, and that's going to be an important conflict throughout the rest of the play too. All right. A few minutes pass. The witches disappear like bubbles, Shakespeare writes, and then Ross and Angus show up, and they reveal to Macbeth, yes, you are indeed now Thane of Cawdor. Turn to line 100 in the play. Angus says, we are sent to give thee from our royal master thanks, and only to herald thee into his sight, not pay thee. And Ross says, line 104, and for an earnest of greater honor he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor. In which addition, hail most worthy Thane, for it is thine. So he reveals here suddenly, you are Thane of Cawdor. And remember, Ross and Angus, they didn't see the witches. They don't know about the prophecy. They're just delivering the king's news from the previous scene. And Macbeth has to be taken aback here, because these witches made two prophecies that are already true. The Thane of Glom's part, which had been true for a long time, and now instantly, within minutes, the Thane of Cawdor piece comes true as well. And he instantly, he wishes it. I think he wants to see the witches again. He has many questions at this point. His mind is just flooded with this, but the witches are gone. They'll come back later in the play, but for the moment they're gone, and he's got to wrestle with what to do. Act 1, Scene 4, where we return back to the king. And the king has, he sent his messengers, he's made his decision regarding the old Thane of Cawdor. And there's an interesting moment here, because he asks at the beginning of Act 1, Scene 4, right at the very beginning, line 1, is execution done on Cawdor? And Malcolm, his son, goes on... We meet Malcolm, his eldest born son. I'll touch base on talk about him here in just a moment. And Duncan goes on though a little later about line 13, and he says of the old Cawdor, he was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust. Speaking of the old Thane of Cawdor. And it's sort of an interesting moment of foreshadowing at the same time as it's backward looking. Thane of Cawdor has already been executed by this point. But he's saying, I absolutely trusted him. Well, we're going to find out, because he's about to now move that trust from the old Thane of Cawdor to the new Thane of Cawdor, to Macbeth. he's not the best judge of character. He picks the wrong guys to put his absolute trust into. In fact, let's jump down a little bit further. Line 28. Duncan Macbeth comes on stage. Duncan says, "Welcome hither, welcome here. I have begun to plant thee and will labor to make thee full of growing." So I begin to, the metaphor of planting a tree or a plant. I've planted you and I am going to nurture you and take care of you and I'm going to raise you into someone great. He's already someone great, but I'm going to make you even greater. You have the love of the king. Again, he picks the wrong people to trust here. He trusted the Thane of Cawdor with absolute trust. And now he's doing the same that we see Duncan and Macbeth together here in this moment. There's also an important moment a few lines later, line 35. Duncan names the next king. He names the Prince of Cumberland here. Now, it's not in ancient Scotland automatic that the eldest born son of the king becomes the next king. It has to be announced, and the king can choose someone else. He doesn't need to necessarily choose his eldest born son. That's the tradition. That's the way it almost always works. But here he makes it official. Line 35. Follow along with me while I read. "Sons, kinsmen, thanes, and you whose places are the nearest, know we will establish our estate upon our eldest, Malcolm, who we name hereafter the Prince of Cumberland." The Prince of Cumberland is the guy who's to be the next king. In England, it's the Prince of Wales. The Prince of Wales is next in line to be the king. And Macbeth doesn't quite know what to do with this. I think for a moment he might have been thinking he was actually going to be the next Prince of Cumberland. He was about to be named that. So now he's not sure what to think. He's got a lot of information here. He's in information overload. He says, line 48. This is an aside, so he's saying it either just to himself or maybe directly to the audience. "The Prince of Cumberland? That's a step on which I must fall down or else o'er a leap. For in my way it lies. Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires." So he's saying here, I'm going to have to do something about the Prince of Cumberland is going to be in my way. If I'm supposed to be king, how does this work? And then he has these dark and deep desires. He says, "Stars, I hope, don't see my dark, my black and deep desires." Act 1, Scene 5, Lady Macbeth. We meet her for the first time, and Lady Macbeth is perhaps the most important, most intriguing, interesting character in the play from many perspectives. She certainly is one of the most villainous characters that Shakespeare writes, and it's the characterization, his writing of Lady Macbeth is just wonderful. She's alone on stage when we see her in Act 1, Scene 5, and she's received a letter. Macbeth, the letter has arrived. All this is happening very, very rapidly. The letter has arrived just moments before Macbeth himself is to show up. So he wrote her out a letter, sent the letter ahead, but didn't beat him there by much. Lady Macbeth reads the letter. Follow along with me. Let's read that again together. Act 1, Scene 5, starting right at the beginning, line 1. "They met me in the day of success." And this is what Macbeth's words to Lady Macbeth. "They, the witches, met me in the day of success, and I have learned by the perfectest report that they have more in them than mortal knowledge. When I burnt in desire to question them further, they made themselves air, into which they vanished. Whilst I stood wrapped in the wonder of it, came missives, or messengers, from the king, who all hailed me Thane of Cawdor." So he's retelling the story we just heard in the first 4 acts. "By which title before these weird sisters saluted me, and referred me to the coming of time with Hail, King, that shalt be. This have I thought good to deliver thee, my dearest partner of greatness." So I've thought it important to send this message forward ahead of myself to you. "That thou mightst not lose the dues of rejoicing by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. Lay it in thy heart, and farewell." So that's the end of his letter. And then we get Lady Macbeth and her reaction to it. And her reaction to it is dark and also wonderful. "Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised." She instantly, as soon as she hears about the prophecy, she has no moment of hesitation. She wants her husband to be king. She wants to be queen, but she's afraid. Not afraid of moving forward. She's afraid that her husband might have some goodness in him. What if Macbeth? I know he's got some goodness in him. It's going to keep him from actually claiming what he's been promised. She says, line 11. 11, continuing right after the letter. Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised, yet I do fear thy nature. It's too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. You have too much kindness in you. You have to get rid of that. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness that should attend it. You need some, if you're going to be really ambitious, if you're going to go all the way for king, you have to have some illness in you. What thou wouldst highly, that wouldst thou holily, wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. Thou'dst have, great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do, if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do than wishest should be undone. Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear. Hurry up and get here. I'm going to pour my spirit into your ear. I'm going to give you some of my resolve to do so. And of course, the messenger comes. The messenger announces, and this was from the previous scene too, I glossed over it pretty quickly, but the messenger reveals that Duncan too is coming to the castle. So we've got Lady Macbeth suddenly getting this news, first of the prophecy and her husband, and now she hears Macbeth's on his way, but so's the king, and her plotting is instant. She knows that she wants the king dead this very night. Lady Macbeth says, the raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan. Lines 34 and 35. The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan. Continuing, under my battlements. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. Unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty. It's an interesting line here because there's a lot in this play about gender in terms of what a man does and what a woman does when it comes to ambition. And she says here, when she says unsex me here, she's saying this sort of this very, very dark prayer. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. So she's praying to these sort of random dark spirits, and she says, unsex me here. Take out any inside of me. I'll take out my womanhood, is what she's saying, and refill it instead from the top. From the crown, the top of her head, to the toe, fill it with direst cruelty. She says, make thick my blood. Stop up the access and passage to remorse. Don't let me feel any regret or pity. I don't want any of that. Stop all that up. I don't want that to be running through my body. That no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers. So I don't want mother's milk in my breasts. I want gall. I want the fortitude to carry forward with this ambition to become king and queen and to kill Duncan. As she's saying this, as she's making this rather dark, obscene kind of prayer, suddenly Macbeth enters. This is line 54. Macbeth says, my dearest love, Duncan comes here tonight. And she says, and when goes hence? Tomorrow, as he purposes. And her resolve is there. She says, oh, never shall sun that morrow see. He's coming tonight, but tomorrow he's not going to see the sun. However, Macbeth doesn't share her resolve, not yet. In fact, even right up until the actual murder, he's not going to have the resolve that Lady Macbeth has. And she sees it in him. She knows that he has this milk of human kindness in him, the very thing that she wanted ripped out of her and replaced with gall. She says, your face, my thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. I can look into your face, and I can see that something strange is up. I know what you're thinking. You can't be like that if you're going to do this. You can't let people look into your face and know what's going on. You got to hide it. You got to hide it. Your face, my thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. To beguile the time, look like the time. Bear welcome in your eye. So smile, be happy, look like welcoming, yeah. Your hand, your tongue, and this is a great line, the next one. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Lady Macbeth, be beautiful. Be handsome, be kind, but in reality, be the serpent underneath the flower. He's that coming must be provided for, and you shall put this night's great business into my dispatch. She's going to take care of it. Macbeth's not convinced. He says, we will speak further. He's not fully convinced yet. Act 1, Scene 6 is interesting. It's the only scene that happens outdoors in the whole play. It's the only scene that has light in it. Duncan says he's arrived at the castle. He's just outside the castle. A moment from now, Lady Macbeth will come outside to greet him, welcome him into the castle. She will be that flower, and at the same time, the serpent under it. But she's going to be very welcoming. In this scene, when she does welcome him, she's got to be smiling, be in her best dress. She's appears to be the perfect hostess. But a moment before that, Duncan says, "This castle hath a pleasant seat. The air nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our gentle senses." Banquo says a few lines later, "I have observed the air is delicate." It's interesting, this moment outside, this moment in the light. Patrick Stewart has commented on the fact this play so often, there's so much darkness in it, literally darkness. So much of the action happens inside and in these darkly, poorly lit rooms. And in fact, there's a lot of there's sort of this belief that there's superstition that it's dangerous to play Macbeth on stage, and maybe one of the reasons Patrick Stewart says why there have been so many weird kind of accidents when we do this play might be because so often it is very dark on stage and you literally can bump into things and hurt yourself. Act 1, Scene 7, the last scene of the act, or the first act, we see Macbeth and he's trying to wrestle. We can see this internal conflict in him as he's wrestling with what to do. He starts out the passage, the scene. He says, "If it were done, then when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If I do it now, if I get it done quickly, that's probably best. I've got to get it done quickly." But then, as he's talking with himself in this soliloquy, he convinces himself this is the wrong thing to do too. Jump down to line 12. Talking of Duncan, he says, "He's here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed. Then, as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, has been so clear in his great office. Duncan has been such a good king to the people, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off. If I actually do this, there's no reason to do this. Duncan's a good king. He's a good man. People love him. And in fact, if I do it, that's all the more darker my sin for doing it. There's no justification for this." And then enter Lady Macbeth. This is the milk of human kindness in Macbeth that she feared. It's coming out here, and she's going to change his mind. He says in line 32 to her, line 31, "We will proceed no further in this business. He hath honored me of late, and I have bought golden opinions from all sorts of people, which would be worn now in their newest gloss, not cast aside so soon." And she works on convincing him, but he at first, it takes a moment. He won't be convinced. A few lines later, line 47, "Prithee, peace. I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is questioned. Who dares do more is none." And here we've got Lady Macbeth questioning his manhood, and going back to this gender play that Shakespeare's doing in Macbeth. She says, "What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? When you durst do it, when you dared to do it, then you were a man." So this is sort of his weakness. Challenge his manhood, especially when Lady Macbeth challenges his masculinity, he breaks. And then there's this really haunting moment. This is line 55. This is one of the most haunting lines, I think, in perhaps the whole play. Lady Macbeth says, "I have given suck, and know how tender 'tis to love the babe that milks me." This is the only reference to the Macbeths having any children whatsoever, but she says, "I have had a child, and I've had it at my breast, milking it. I know what that's like to be a mother." And she says, "I would, whilst it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from its boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn as you have done to this." She says, "I have had a son," which apparently she doesn't have a son anymore. I don't think she killed her son. That's not what she's saying here. But she's saying, "I would have dashed my own baby son's brains out if I'd promised to do so." And what's interesting about this is she's sort of implying that Macbeth has promised to do this. Nowhere in the text says he promised that he would, but she assumes so, and it works. Her sense of resolve it steals Macbeth to actually do this. And he questions, though. He says, "If we should fail, we fail," she says in line 60. "So what? Who cares if we fail? If we fail, we fail. And she says, though, the next line, line 61, but screw your courage to the sticking place, and we'll not fail. And then she comes up with the plan. This is how we'll do it. When Duncan's asleep, I'll give his drinks to his guards. He's got 2 guards. I'll get them drunk. I'll put some stuff in the drink to make them fall asleep. You'll go in there. You'll kill Duncan with their daggers, and then it will look like they did it. It'll look like they did it. We'll put the daggers back on them. He hears this plan, and Macbeth has a line, line 74. Bring forth men, children only, for thy undaunted mettle should compose nothing but males. And by the end of the scene, he's ready to commit murder. Line 80, Act 1, Scene 7, the very last line of the act. I am settled, and bend up each corporal agent to this terrible feat. Away, and mock the time with fairest show. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. So let's put on this show. Let's be the innocent flower, but really be the serpent under it. And let's go out and speak with the king, and we'll do our banquet tonight. We'll look like we're supposed to do this. But yeah, he's resolved. So at the beginning of the scene, he was resolved not to commit the murder. Lady Macbeth changed his mind completely. All right, that concludes the first mini lecture of Macbeth. I'll rejoin you for the second here in a little bit.